Ravi de vous avoir aujourd'hui, Nesrine Changuen, pour cette nouvelle session. Et j'arrête tout de suite parce que je le fais en français alors qu'on devrait le faire en anglais.
On devait le faire justement.
Merci, ça va aller. Hop, une petite goutte de café, on repart.
Allez, on va y arriver, on va y arriver.
On va y arriver. Hey, Nesrine, I'm so happy to have you today for this new episode of ProdCamp podcast, where we'll be talking about a very important topic especially for us at ProdCamp, which is continuous product discovery and how we can delight our user through continuous product discoveries. This has been a big topic for you in your career, and you have an extensive one with many names on it. And I will let you introduce yourself because you will do it better than me, for sure. Hello, Nesrine.
Hi, Mate. Thanks for having me today. I'm Nesrine. I am a product coach. I have more than 15 years experience in product management. But to start with the beginning, I started my career as a research engineer. So right after my engineering degree, I get myself even deeper in tech. So I did a PhD and worked at Nokia Bell Labs. And after a couple of years as a researcher, I moved into the product management world first with Skype as part of Microsoft. And with that, I moved from Paris to Stockholm. I've been with Skype for about 4 years working on, it may sound a bit old feature now, but we introduced it like group video call for Skype and translation, live translation as well. Then after a couple of years, I moved to Spotify. And also, again, I worked on media, like how we introduced video to Spotify. It may sound a bit weird because people know more about audio for Spotify, but we introduced video clips. My team also introduced the video podcast at Spotify and more video content there. My latest product management role has been at Google. So I worked first on Google Meet I called myself like the Google Meet Delight PM. So how can we make Google Meet more delightful for the users? But then I also moved to Chrome. So I worked on Chrome iOS for the last 2 years. So this has been my journey as a PM and as a researcher. And since early this year, I moved to the coaching side where I'm helping product teams and leaders build more impactful and lovable products as well. In addition to all this career, I'm a big passion of public speaking, like I'm giving talks about product in many places. And I'm also teaching both on the academic and the corporate side.
Wow. Do you have time to sleep, Nesrine?
I do. Don't worry.
Thank you for this overview and this more context about your background. And so in your career and just now in your intro, you emphasized the importance of product discovery. Could you explain what continuous product discovery means to you and how and why it's so critical for today's business and in the context of product management?
It's becoming quite clear now for all product managers that part of the job is about discovery, another part is about delivery. But the challenge still, when I hear more and more from the clients I'm coaching and more organizations, is that most of the product managers still get themselves stuck in the deliveries. They are spending more and more time with their engineers and trying to help them get things done rather than trying to identify new opportunities. I personally myself has been into that situation. So let me explain how things started for me. So since I have a technical background, like I've been an engineer myself, when I started as a PM, there's a high temptation to get closer to the engineers and try to read their code and try to comment on that and help them. I mean, with the good intention, of course. The idea was to sit with them. And that was a mistake in the beginning because since I was an IC in my early career, I also wanted to contribute in that way. But very quickly, I realized that there is actually no value, or at least very little value for doing that work versus trying to help them identify the whys of things and what do we need to build next. So let's say over the first 2 years, I've been struggling with that. And then I managed to find the equilibrium, meaning that I tried slowly to shift myself away from delivery and focus more on discovery, meaning that trying to bring to the engineer a clear strategy, give them a clear vision, and also give them more and more insight from the users. Now, you asked about continuous discovery, and this is the best and the beauty part of the discovery, because discovery is not a discipline that you do in the beginning of the year and then you jump again into this delivery. That's not going to work. The best way to make it work is to have a continuous habit, meaning all throughout the year, you're always putting yourself into that habit, and you're always trying to reach the users, always trying to identify new opportunities. And I mean, for me, the way how this worked is by having two roadmap. One roadmap for the engineers, meaning that this is what we will be building, and a roadmap throughout the year, like throughout the 12 months. What will I'll be spending time on discovering? How am I gonna structure my discovery throughout the year? By doing so, you will always manage to do discovery throughout the year.
Basically, there is a roadmap within the roadmap for the PM
Yeah.
projects, pretty much. So that's what I'm understanding, right?
It's not a roadmap within the roadmap. It's actually two roadmaps. They are completely separate. And I call them discovery roadmap and delivery roadmap. So discovery roadmaps, of course, come with a high risk, meaning that these kind of identification will not end up in something that we will build. But I always try to show to the leaders, look, these are opportunities that, or these are problems that we want to explore. And we will be spending the 12 months trying to identify these problems. Now, the delivery roadmaps are a list of solutions, meaning that these are solutions that we already explored in the previous roadmap, and we are sure that they will bring value to the users. So think about them as two different roadmaps. One is for solutions, and they are ready to be built for the engineers and designers, and the other roadmap is more for me and the my counterpart, like my designers, my engineer leads, where we will be exploring these problems and trying to move them from the discovery roadmap into the delivery roadmap for the next step.
It's really, really interesting. Based on your experience, working in leading tech companies, how do you see the role of a product manager evolve within this context of continuous discovery?
Luckily, it's evolving in a good way, meaning that I start to hear more and more product manager aware that they need to spend more time in discovery. For example, like I'm going to give you a little bit of numbers throughout my career. When I started, I feel like I started more like 80% into delivery and 20% into discovery. I was very close, as I said, into the planning, into writing user stories, grooming, estimating, etc. So I was involving myself too much into that. Over my career, as I told you earlier, like I realized that my biggest value and the way how engineers really appreciate my work is by working more on the discovery part. So I would say over the last 4 years, I've been maybe 40% into the delivery and 60% into discovery, which is like I think the best and the most reasonable distribution of time. Also, when you work with engineers, they are brilliant people that you work with, and you need to trust them on how they can deliver their stuff. They know better than me how they will deliver my stuff. So it's just a way, or it's a mindset. You need to work on your mindset that just give them the trust and the opportunity to get their stuff done, and help them through offering them a clear strategy and clearly defined opportunities. So this has been like more or less the shift from a 20% discovery to 60% discovery.
According to you and your experience, maybe you have some more effective methods, tools, technique that you can recommend for product managers to facilitate this continuous product discovery. Is there any methodologies you favor?
Yeah, so it's not about methodology again. It's a habit, and you need to build habit. Habit takes time, of course, and we're all resistant to new habit. I mean, we love our routine and how we're doing things, and as soon as we have to change things, it becomes like much more complex, psychologically at least. So the best tool, I would say, is the one that I evoked earlier, which is having, every time you're asked to do a roadmap, try to do those two, like the discovery and the delivery. Even if you're asked to do only one roadmap, do two roadmaps, one with clearly identified opportunities and one with just problems. These are problems we absolutely have no solution for. We're not even sure that if they are a real problem or not, but that's exactly what I will be working on. So every time, like we do that like twice a year, like a brainstorming session, and that involve everyone in the team. By the way, the brainstorming session should not be something that is only for PM, but like everyone in the team need to be involved, where we try to identify problems, not solutions. Like solutions are something else. I mean, we do separate things for identifying solutions, but we at the end of the year, mostly around September or October, we do extended brainstorming session, and we try to identify what are the problems that could solve users' problem, like a user's life, that we can work on. And I compile this problem into a discovery roadmap. And I need to be 100% aligned with my UX researcher, 100% aligned with my UX designers and the tech lead, that these are real problems that we need to work on for next year. So I would say the best tool is to force yourself having two clearly defined roadmaps.
I love that, really. And that's interesting, because so you're saying that we need to focus on, and as PMs, we should spend most of our time on product discovery, which I agree definitely, because that's a big part of the job, and that's a big part of making sure the job still stay relevant in time, you know. But I also hear many PMs and product people in general saying that there is not enough time. There is this time constraint to be able to do discovery properly. Maybe you've seen this challenge, and what are the common challenges you have observed team facing when implementing continuous product discovery, as you suggested?
Yeah, I love it too, because the reality of things is we have plenty of time. We just don't necessarily use it the right way. I mean, I think we all have the same amount of time. We just, it's a matter of how we want to spend most of our effort. I told you also in my early career, I was too much into the delivery, but then it's a shift in the mindset, and it's a realization that my biggest value is not in the code, is not in the delivery, but rather in the discovery. So if we realize that, then we need to slowly work toward it. And I think the biggest obstacle is the lack of trust I've seen so far. So if we try to be very close to the engineers, we show them that we control their work, and then they will also rely on you, meaning that they know that you're around in that process of delivery. So they will be just all the time waiting for you to test things or to validate that it's okay. But if you clearly communicate to the engineers, hey, this is your process, this is your part now, I'm here with you and not for you, I'm here with you to get it done, then surprisingly, and believe me, they will own it 100%, because you gave them the ownership. It's about clarifying who's owning the piece. If the engineers are owning delivery and you're owning discovery, it will just work perfectly. However, if you tell them that I'm here to work with you to validate what you are building, then they will always rely on you and wait for you to validate things. So I would say it's a matter of clarifying ownership and a matter of trust.
Coming back to trust, you know, I believe this is also a way to convince your management to that user discovery is the most important part and mission you will have. How do you prove that product discovery can directly or indirectly influence revenue, and particularly in digital business, so you can explain this shift that you want to do as a product person when you are in the company?
Yeah, the best way to influence within that piece of work is to give the right definition of the discovery. So here is my definition for discovery. Doing discovery means that you need to identify the right product. Delivery, though, is about shipping the product right. Do you get the difference? Like delivery is about whatever you identified so far, you just needed to ship it right, in a good shape and a good way, and it worked perfectly. Discovery is trying to identify the right product, meaning that if we don't spend so much time in discovery, we will just build crap, and that crap, of course, will be shipped right, but nobody will use it. So if you skip that very fundamental and very important step of trying to identify the right product, then everything you do after that is a waste of time, which is, you feel sorry for the engineers and for the company about that. So I've seen over the last 12 years of my career that the more time you spend on identifying the right product, the more effective the product will become, and the more efficient it is, and the more adoption you create, and the more user you bring in, and then of course more revenues. So I would say the best way to argue, even if it feels weird that you still have to argue about that, but if you have to, then try to explain it's about identifying the right solution for the users.
Thank you. It's really well articulated, and I think it's will be very useful for many PMs. I'm interested. We talked about your background in the beginning of this interview, and you have quite an extensive one. And I was interested when we prepared this interview, like how has your academic background in physics and engineering shaped your approach to product management and especially discovery?
It played certainly a lot of roles, some positive and some negatives. I mean, I want to admit both. The negative one, which I already said about trying to get too much into and very close into the solution, and try to also help the engineers in a good intention get things done. But the very positive part, especially comes from my PhD. So I spent 3 years as a PhD student, and then I worked as a research engineer. So in total, I've been a research for about 5 years. And this phase of my life shaped my way of thinking, because as a researcher, believe me, it's crazy how much time you spend identifying the problem. I mean, you're given a problem in a super wide range and space. So for example, during my PhD, my first year, just think about it, first entire year trying to understand the problem, meaning that we do a lot of state of the art, try to identify what others have done so far, what the society is suffering from, meaning that what the users are suffering from, and how can we come up with something that makes their life better. So this is the core fundamental aspect of being a researcher. So when I went to PM, it was obvious for me that I need also to focus on problem, not only on solutions. We hear a lot about falling in love with problem rather than solution, etc. But for me, it's not about love. It's about spending your time, whether you love it or not. Even if you don't love it, just spend your time identifying the problem, and do a lot of competitive analysis, what others have done so far, why users prefer this solution versus the other. So this is something I've done a lot during my research, and I found it extremely useful in the PM world.
In the same time, we understood throughout this interview that discovery should be the place where you spend most of your time. So probably you better love it, because you're going to spend a lot of time there, and it's going to be easier if you love it. But yeah, you will need
Absolutely.
to do it anyway. So I love that. In your previous podcasts and conferences, you often spoken about diversity in product teams and how important is that. Can you discuss and explain us how diverse perspective contribute to a more effective product discovery? It might seem obvious, right? But how do you handle this type of process, and how do you blend those diverse perspective?
I think the biggest risk when you're not too much into diverse mindset is that you focus on a specific persona and try to solve a problem for a specific range of users. This happens a lot sometimes, like we identify a problem and we don't necessarily think about who else is impacted by this problem, or how can I solve this not only for these users, but also for everyone. So I've got a chance to work for Google, where we are always providing solution for billions of users. And when you are at that scale, you cannot, I mean, there's no way to not be inclusive and diverse in your mindset while doing discovery. So every time we try to like segment our users in as many segment as possible, but not only segment them by, let's say, I've seen a lot of people segmenting users by age, by gender, by country. This is not what I call diversity. So it could also be diverse by how they are using their habit, meaning that how they're using the product. Let me give you an example from Spotify, for example. When I worked at Spotify, of course, we had personas related to countries, age, etc. But the best persona, the persona segmentation that really brought us the biggest value is when we started segmenting users who go to Spotify while knowing exactly what kind of music they want to listen to, versus users who go to Spotify with no idea what they want to listen to. They just want Spotify to offer them something beautiful that fit their tastes. You see, it's a very huge difference. And when you start collecting data, you realize that a lot of people goes to Spotify with no idea what they want to listen to. And then when you craft a solution for them, you craft something that will meet their need. It's not about their age. It's not about their gender or whatever. It's about their need. So I would say the best way of segmenting your users is to think about what's their needs and what's the diversity of needs as well. I mean, we do have complete different needs, and it's completely understandable, and we need to be aware about that.
Love how you approach it by, kind of slicing this elephant of billions of people into at least several problems that you can, approach differently and more accurately, because you approach them with these different methods and solutions. That's great. You are also a teacher. You said it in the intro. And having taught the product management executive program at INSEAD, what key principle do you impart to upcoming product leaders about sustaining innovation through discovery?
What I love about teaching, I mean, I've got caught by this teaching passion during my research time again. I mean, as a researcher, I used to teach a lot, and then when I moved to PM, I missed it. So I need to have one leg into teaching at some point. So I'm very happy that I'm doing that now. I did it with INSEAD, I'm doing it with ESSEC, so it's at many places. And I try to diversify by doing a bit of teaching at the academic side, but also teaching at the corporate side, and both comes with a lot of advantage for me. Of course, the first one is that I get to interact with others and try to understand what's their challenge. I mean, it's an opportunity for exchanging life over a non-constrained time. But also the biggest advantage that come out of this experience is that it solidifies the knowledge. I mean, there's a huge difference between listening to podcasts, reading books, etc., and teaching. When you get to teaching, you're at the top, highest level of the pyramid of retention and expertise of the subject. So what I love about teaching is that it's a confidence level that brings me, of course, that I'm able to, not only I know the data, but I'm also able to spread it out and give it to others so that they also can benefit out of it. So it's a win-win most of the time. It's a huge rewarding experience.
Would you, we're approaching the end of this interview. Any, advice that you could give to product leaders who are struggling to integrate continuous discovery into their daily routine? You're mentioning the double roadmap, and maybe we keep it with that one. I understood this was your main advice.
Yeah. I think, of course, the double roadmap is one thing. And the second thing is, of course, to always do things incrementally. I mean, we are always, even if we do great discovery, we always move to the delivery with a hypothesis. I mean, we never know until the users start using the product. So it's a waste that if we come up with a huge solution that engineers will spend months building, and then we realize that it was not the right hypothesis. Of course, as I said, we do our best, but it's still like, it's speculation most of the time during discovery. So I would highly recommend doing things gradually, incrementally, and not jump into a huge problem. I would love to share a concrete example that I personally worked on during my Spotify time with my team. Is that at some point we worked a lot on audio, we introduced a podcast, But then came the idea that, hey, we need to enhance audio through video. So video should be a tool or a way, a new type of media that should enhance the audio experience. But it sounded like a crazy and a huge technical challenge. How can you introduce video in a system that is much more adapted for audio? And the way how we did it is we did it first by doing an experiment by introducing 2 or 3 clips. We introduced the clips from Metallica, and we look at how people receive them. Are they using them? Is there any technical challenge? So we validated the usability, the feasibility, the value of, etc. And then we introduced more and more videos. First, we introduced what we call the artist clips. Artist clips are like short 30-second video that the artist can upload in order to share and communicate with their fan. Hey, I have a concert next week or something like that. It was very short. So from a technical perspective, it was also a way to validate that the system and the users will adopt it. And then, of course, now you can see more and more and much longer video, like the video podcast that could last for 2 hours or whatever. And that's just a concrete example that even if we had that crazy idea that we wanted to introduce more video into the platform, we went there by doing step-by-step and small incremental solutions.
Love it, and that's a great example. So smaller incrementals, smaller risk, and even if you have a big innovative thing, you can slice it and slice the elephant to eat it. I love that. I will ask one last question before I let you go, Nesrine. You've mentioned that being an avid learner in your career, and I'm curious, what are you currently exploring or learning in the field of product management or tech in general?
Okay, I've been reading a lot about product management, but this time I'm reading something that is not necessarily very much tied to the product management. It's called The Coaching Habit. It's not a new book. It's a quite old book, by the way, but it's a reference in the coaching environment. So since I said, like, I recently moved to the coaching side, I found out that I have a lot of experience when it comes about product, but I'm also solidifying my way of how can I listen to others and try to identify what they want to solve. And by reading this book, what I realized is that, I mean, this book is all about how can you ask the right question, but also how can you say less and listen, and like listen to the others. I realized that it could actually apply to product management, because if you're doing users interview, you need to listen and say less. So I think I highly recommend this book. It's amazing. It's called The Coaching Habit by Michael Bungay, and it will definitely change your way of how you will listen to the users.
Thank you so much for this last advice. So a coaching book, but that applies a lot for product management too. Thank you for your time, your knowledge, and everything you shared from your experience, Nesrine, in this podcast interview. I'm so happy to have you and have had this conversation with you, and hope we'll do that again soon.
Thank you, Mate.
Bye-bye.
Bye.